What is psychology? Is it scientific? What's science? How do you figure these things out? Let's talk a little bit about the definition of psychology, science, and what our conclusions are about that. So let's start with this. A physicist, psychologist, physician, and a few other people walk into a bar. Well, let's say they walk into a scientific experiment. You've got your physicist, physician, psychologist, an experimental subject, and Larry the cable guy. Now they're there. Let's start with this. Some of them are going to be involved. I've got my keys. Important things. My office, my car, and all that. I'm in my office here today. So pretend I'm holding them 6 feet off the ground. I drop them to the ground, and they fall. They hit the ground. Pick them up, put them away. Okay, a physicist is observing this, doing some research. What are they interested in? What are they going to predict? What variables are they going to measure? What conclusions are they going to make? They're going to look at things like velocity, acceleration, mass, weight, the force of gravity, the impact on the ground, the amount that the Earth shakes, if you could even measure that based on all those factors. That's what a physicist studies. So none of these other people are involved, except let's say Larry the cable guy's there, and what does he do? He observes and he says, yeah, get her done. That's Larry. Okay. Now we're going to have an experimental subject here, and we're going to put them through the same thing that we do with the keys. So instead of keys, let's pretend, of course this is not ethical, we wouldn't really do this, but let's pretend we drop a person 6 feet onto the ground. And not feet first, so it's going to hurt. Okay. So physicist measures, looks at the same factors: acceleration, gravity, weight, mass, force. Physician, which many of us consider a scientist, would look at some different things. Would look at the impact on the body, vital signs like blood pressure, breathing, pulse, any trauma to the body, an injury. They might predict and measure those kinds of things. Larry the cable guy is still in his corner saying, get her done. Okay, and now, but what about the psychologist? The psychologist is going to study a different subject matter, more observable external behavior. What does the person do or say before, during, and after, supposing they survive? Well, 6 feet off the ground, they'll probably survive. They will also look at internal states, maybe doing some predicting and measuring and interviewing, asking about thoughts, feelings, attitudes, interpretations, what's going on inside our head. Now, this is different subject matter you can see of these different people, these different scientists as we would consider them. And that's part of the issue here, is the subject matter does not really determine whether something's science or not. It's scientific methods. They all use the same methods if they're scientists. And many people would argue that a physicist, a psychologist, and a physician, physicians study quite a bit of biology and chemistry, all study slightly different subject matter, but they are using the same methods. They're making observations, they're making predictions, they're testing them out, they're being neutral and unbiased, and looking at statistics and data, and trying to come to conclusions and do further research and learn about the world and possibly help people with just different subject matter. Many people, particularly lay people, might think that, well, it's science is determined by what you study. And when we think of what's a scientist, our stereotype comes to mind is an older guy, maybe with a beard and a mustache, a white coat, a laboratory, something like that. And those are sometimes what scientists fit. But it's not the subject matter, it's the manner that you study things. So for example, if I was going to say, based on your birth year or birth date, I could predict your personality and what you would do in the future, that would have to be put to a scientific test. And if we want to call that a type of astrology, it's fun to play around with, but not necessarily scientific. So it's not science. So the definition of psychology, therefore, is it's the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. So scientific study is a key piece of this definition. Behavior, which is external, observable, mental processes is internal, our thoughts and feelings. That's the definition. That's how we determine that. And we have many sciences on campus, of course. Now you might say, okay, I heard about that made up thing. You're going to drop keys. Now you're going to drop a person. You're making this up. But guess what? There was a research study that actually looked at some of this with people, with one exception. It wouldn't be ethical to get experimental subjects and randomly assign them to groups and decide who we're going to drop off a building. But sometimes people have tried this on their own and survived, and we've interviewed them. So we call that ex post facto research. It's events that have already happened and we're going backwards in time, hence the word post, and doing research that way because it may be the only option. So this research study, you could look it up maybe on Google search. You might find something like this. I'm not sure of the exact words. It was based out of the Bay Area in California. A number of people have, over the years, jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco for suicide attempts. And most of them did kill themselves. A few of them survived over a number of years. And in one research study, they actually interviewed some of these people who had survived what you would think would be a very deadly method of suicide, just about as good and as lethal as shooting a gun to your head, except that it takes a lot longer. They interviewed these people. They asked them, what were you thinking on the way down? It takes, 5-10 seconds, and that's quite an eternity. I could imagine in that situation, and almost all of these people said, I would have changed my mind. I had second thoughts. I thought, oh no, this is a bad idea. But of course they have a lot of time to think about it on the way down, and it's too late, and miraculously some of them survived. So we've often thought in the suicide studying that most people are still wanting to live, and only people who choose an extremely lethal method of suicide attempting really want to die. But we find that even if we give them a few extra seconds, they change their mind. So that's an actual research study that seems like what I was just doing as a made-up example to decide the definition of psychology. So that's our video for today. We'll see you next time.